Good morning. How are you? In fact, good evening, Mr. Dunlop. How are you?
Good morning, Mr. Lee. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good, very good. Conversation number 5, and there's been a progression of the conversations, and we're still talking, which is positive. This one, sustaining the change. I mean, do you want to just talk through your LinkedIn poll first? I mean, you've had lots of interest in this, haven't you? Considerably more than my LinkedIn poll, but I'm not jealous.
That's a record. We're growing. So I forget what the question was, but it was something about sustaining change. So the questions were, well, essentially what will it take, or what does it take to sustain a lean culture or change in an organization? So 4 questions were: committed senior leadership, ownership on the front line, a great CI team or consultant, and a culture of learning.
Hey, very good. And did any of the results surprise you?
Yes and no. So what do you think came out on top?
So I think this is I think it's fascinating, because I think it depends on the type of people in your community. I think, because just give us the 4 again in order.
Committed senior leadership,
Yeah,
ownership on the front line,
yeah,
great CI team or consultant, and a culture of learning.
yeah. So I think probably what came out on top was committed leadership team. And the reason why I say that is because if you look at all of the studies and everything that's said, and all of the conversation and narrative around this change thing, they always say that leaders are the most fundamental part of it. Unless you're a leader, and then you would probably say something different to that. And I think if you're a leader, you may say either the learning or what was the second one?
Ownership on the front line.
Yes, that one. If you're a leader, you're probably saying that one. But yeah. So anyway, what were the scores on the doors?
So committed senior leadership, 53%.
Yeah.
Ownership on the front line, 13%. A great CI team or consultant, 1%. And a culture of learning, 34%.
Wow.
So,
Hey, fascinating.
yeah.
I think those results are interesting. I mean, the leadership one, I think, is the obvious answer. It's what everybody says, but it's not what everybody does, and that's why I think it's interesting, because not everybody has committed leadership. So everybody wants to change, but not everybody has committed leadership, and they don't all do it from a continuous improvement perspective and develop that learning organization as well.
So when we talk about that, Lee, what do you think is committed leadership, and who is that committed leadership?
Yeah, normally, Paul, it's me that asks the questions. I don't like this roles reversal. Yeah. So I think so. I mean, I think one of the big things about change is that everybody says that it should be bottom up, and yes, some things should be bottom up, but there's an expectation that also some things should be top down, and I think that's what we miss. So when we talk about leadership, I think it's top down. We need role modeling. We need expectation setting. We need clarity of vision. And what I mean by clarity of vision, I don't mean a sentence that gets plastered on a wall. I mean clarity of vision and clarity of understanding, and translating it in a meaningful way for everybody, so they know when they're coming to work what they need to do to do that. So when I talk about committed leadership, I think committed leadership is role modeling what good looks like. It is setting clear expectations, and it is clarity of vision in that definition, I think. And I think that's from every layer of the organisation, just in a meaningful way for the people that's underneath them, and in an aligned way as well. So yes, I mean that's how I would say, and because I think it's dead easy to say change should be bottom up and all of that stuff, but then that's kind of like that's just saying everybody, it changes for everybody else and not for us. And when we talk about sustaining the change, if people don't see us doing anything differently, then why the blooming heck should they do anything differently?
I think that's almost because when I say who is the committed senior leadership, so I agree, it's committed leadership at all levels from the front line. But I'm sort of always thinking that committed senior leadership is the person or the people at the top. It's the owner, it's the CEO, the executive. And I think almost sometimes it's interesting to see, like you talk about leaders that go, well, it's everybody else who needs to change. We're fine. And I think it probably tells you a lot about the organisation where that hits the ceiling, if you know what I mean. So I've seen organisations that I've went into where that'll start to tap out at middle management, where they don't want to be involved in any training, or no, we know this stuff, and you know it's just not going to work because you've hit that ceiling. Sometimes you don't hit that ceiling, and the senior people or person is bought in, completely engaged. They show enough humility to know what they don't know, and want to engage in a meaningful way. But I think in some organisations, that's a really good indicator of where they're at and potentially the success that they're going to have.
Yeah, completely. And I might have said this in one of the previous conversations as well about because when you use the word commitment, the difference between pigs and chickens in the making of breakfast, and I think that really sums this up. So in the making of breakfast, chickens have a role to play; they lay the eggs, but the pigs are absolutely committed. And I think that's the difference, and I think it's everybody's on the line and everybody's in it together, as opposed to just being an active participant, and it's just what you've always done and stuff. Dean has commented and said, "Good morning, evening, guys." Smiley face. Good morning, Dean. And he's also said, "Need to define the reason for SLT support because business time and resource needs to be agreed for time to allow improvement to proceed." And I think this kind of leads on to the whole sustaining the change dash the secret. And when we were talking about the title and what the topic we were going to talk about today, and it was about sustainment in itself, then is there a secret to it? In fact, actually, we had a tender, and I think we spoke about this. We had a tender that we had to respond to, and they said in that tender, they said, what's the biggest difference between your successful clients and your most unsuccessful clients? And part of our response and part of our answer was the ability and willingness to do something when we're not in the room. And that really is what sustainment is. And we have had a comment separately this past week from Joe from Texas, who says, so he's a lean consultant, and he says that there's certain teams that might keep you working with you for a period of time, but not really be doing anything different. So that the pay and stuff, and I guess that there's like a bit of a safety blanket and stuff. So I think there's two ways to look at this. Way number one is, how do you remove yourself completely from the equation, and cut that umbilical cord, and then leave people to go and sustain and deliver the change. And then point number two, or the original one, is around how do you get people to do things when you're not there? How do you do that, Paul Dunlop?
It's a very good question. One I think I'm still answering. Go back to the secret. Well, the secret is a sort of no secret. It's many things. I think you touch on a good point, just in terms of, do you do the right thing when no one's looking, having that integrity. And I think probably wind it back and what really is committed leadership? What does committed leadership look like? Committed leadership to me is about integrity. Committed leadership to me is about trusting in the process. I always talk about I use the word unflinching these days, where it's, we know it's a bumpy journey. It's a hard road. There'll be many moments where we are racked with doubt and thinking, well, is this new way, or is this different way really the way? Or is it much easier and more comfortable and safer just to do it the way we've always done it? And so I think it's that ability to stay the course, even when it's difficult, even when we're busy, even when we're under pressure, even when everybody's screaming no, to push through that. So I think there's, part of that, and I always talk about, and I'm rambling a bit, but I always talk about discipline often being the determining factor between success, mediocrity, and failure in this space. And it is just the ability to show up every day, execute on the basics, and do this stuff. So in terms of, how it happens and how, people do what's being asked when you're not there. I can only speak to, I can speak to being a manager years ago, but as a consultant, I think, again, this is about them, not about me. And, I think I'm practicing the letting go almost immediately. There's little breadcrumbs, little tests, little bits of ownership that I give over. And then it's, all right, guys, you figure it out. A lot of the time as a consultant, I just cause disruption and mess and say, okay, you figure it out. And so I think from day one, I'm trying to do that, because ultimately my job is, again, to make myself unnecessary. I want to build capability so I can bugger off and go to the next client. So that starts from day one. I don't want to build, it's no good building reliance. It's no good, being the safety blanket. They've got to stand on their own 2 feet. Oh, it's like being a parent. It's the same stuff, really. I don't want to be tying their shoelaces when they're 30. It's not helping anyone. So, so I think to answer that question, it's sort of microdosing, just little bits, letting them take the ownership, letting them make the mistakes, letting them learn, but also have the success on their own as well. I think that's really important.
I love that.
Small steps.
I love that phrase, practicing letting go and doing that from day one, because often a number of people I speak to, that they expect that the consultant, the coach, is the one that's coming in with all of the ideas, that's got the framework and the solution and all of these things, but their mindset is they're going in to fix a problem. But if the problem, if they're going in with that that mindset, then they're not practicing letting go from day one. They're trying to fix a problem from day one. And I think that's the whole mindset shift of what you're saying. What you're saying there from the helper, from the coach, from the consultant that's going in, is actually to rather than delivering a distinct piece of work and then going, right, okay, now we've got to wean you off me, type of thing. So I think that's really important. And what I liked also in your answer is that the microdose and I guess getting people to start stuff sooner rather than later. Just practice, learn, fail, practice, learn, and just continuous learning. It's on the podcast, I spoke to Carl Clem, who was a senior chap in Toyota, and he said it's about the rule of 12. He says, if I can get somebody to try something 12 times, then there's a greater chance that it will continue. And often when you're like talking about doing something, whether it be daily meetings, whether it be problems, whatever it is, if you can get them to start doing it, then it's easier then to take a step back. I remember facilitating a session a couple of years ago now, and I was supporting the change team, and the change team person was in the room with the senior leaders, and they built this room with loads of visual management on and stuff like that. And I looked at, and an argument kicked off between like 2 or 3 senior leaders in the room about this what they built, and it was a daily meeting, and they were like kicking off an argument. And I looked at the change guy, and his face dropped, and he physically took a step back. And and we were dissecting it afterwards, and we were talking about what was going through your mind and what was happening and stuff. And he was like, oh no, all my good work is being undone. They don't like this solution that they put in place. We're going to have to start again. Then that was his narrative. And then I said, what did you do? And he went, and then I looked at you. I was like, all right, okay. And what was I doing? He went, you were smiling and orchestrating the chaos. And I was thinking, yeah, because they're passionate. They want it to work. Conflict is just differing opinions. And if you can use that, then people protect what they build. And that it's a story I tell a little bit, because I love that, because it's the different what happens in our brain and how much ownership we take on it versus how much ownership we want everybody else to take on it as well. So yeah, it's just a little ad lib there, Mr. Dunlop. Little ad lib.
I actually had that conversation today. Just same but different. But again, disruption. Often creating or driving things towards a point of crisis through the change process to enable us to move on. So, always think and always say, well, it's going to get worse before it gets better. You have to almost bottom out sometime, depending on where you're coming from. The organisation I'm working in today, with all due respect, is a bit of a mess, and we need to get to that point. We need to almost break it to. It's like the $6 million man. We need to break it to rebuild it properly. And we have to have these for the leadership in particular, because this is all sitting on leadership. Is that we have to look in the mirror. We have to have that self-awareness and acknowledge what's going on. We have to take, again, this isn't about blame and judgment, but we have to accept responsibility and take ownership in order for us to then start to change our behavior and move forward. So, I think every organization that wants to engage with this will go through some version of it, and it's okay. And I know both of us as consultants, the beautiful monuments that we build, or the idea that we've got in our head, that doesn't rarely comes to fruition. I understand that all I'm doing is providing some guidance. I always refer to myself as the tour guide, and it's like I'm placing markers along the road, and these people can sort of touch and feel it and play with it, but then they've got to own it in their way. As long as they're learning the thinking, and practicing with deliberate practice and intention, and really embracing the philosophy, then I don't care how they do it. They've just got to do it in their way, and they're going to make mistakes and whatever. So, that's half the fun of it. And,
Yeah.
I understand why you're smiling, because these are the things we want to see. That's just the growing pains of change.
That's right. That's right. And in my head, I said then when you were talking, I think there's two different types of guides who are supporting this, and there's a tour guide, is what you've just beautifully articulated there, and then there's a tool guide, and a guide that uses the tools. And I think it's the difference between a tour guide and a tool guide that is the difference between that would enable greater sustainment, because they're teaching two or supporting two different things. I just want to pick up on Dave Cartwright's comment. He says, brilliant comments, Paul. Exclamation mark. The consultant has to have an abundance mindset and want to leave capable people with clarity, clear of where, how to maintain change, full stop. So you got with all of the punctuation as well there in the comment. Yeah. So what are you thinking at the minute, Paul Dunlop?
A couple of things. I've scribbled some notes. I think, like, we talk about sustaining, but I think there's, to me, there's three phases. There's implementing, there's maintaining, and then there's sustaining. Not sure what your thoughts are, but I think that's kind of the journey. And I think they all look a bit the same, but they all look different. And I think you have to understand where you're at.
So what's your definition of those three things, just before I tell you whether I agree or disagree with you?
Ooh, are you going to disagree?
I don't know. I'm hoping so.
Well, I didn't actually define.
Don't
I mean,
backtrack, Mike
to me,
Dunlop.
to me. Oh no, here we go. Um, to me, I probably put it in time, in reference to time, and I just wrote down probably some of the activity that sort of happens in those phases. So, I mean, implementation for me, depending on the organization, depending on the size of the organization, is anywhere from 1 to 3 years. And I think people go, what? Talking to a lot of people when we're talking about lean, and I know you've seen this, is that 3 months down the track now, have we done lean yet? Are we finished? So there's those conversations, but implementation, I think Dave sort of touched on a couple of things there, but it's really setting the scene. It's about being clear on purpose, on vision, on values, and a lot of the upfront work is setting that baseline. That's part of a true north. I think there's knowledge transfer and education. There's clear framing of the why. I think why is very important. I think as well, in any change process, we're dealing with emotions. I think upfront, in any change process, it's an emotional journey, and we need to be able to acknowledge and manage people's emotions, because it's as a consultant, people think I'm going to rock their world and change everything and tell them everything they do is crap and blah 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 blah. So there's fear there. People going into safety and shutting down and responding in passive or aggressive ways, whatever it might be. So I mean, I think that's something we need to be very clear on. So yeah, striving to eradicate fear, inclusion, consultation, collaboration. I think there's deference in terms of humility and respect for people, particularly those people at the front lines, addressing pain points. That has to be targeted and intentional. So often change processes try and bite off the whole lot at once, rather than smaller targeted projects or pilot projects. If we want to practice what we preach, it's PDCA. So often we have to go through a bit of learning on a smaller scale to really be able to tackle everything. And it'll tell us a lot about the culture and perhaps some of the challenges it faces longer term. Leadership need to be committed and understand what we're trying to do. So I think, again, from the get-go, leadership, there's no point trying to sell or convince. We need to be very clear and really frame the truth of the matter for leadership to know what they're getting into, because you don't want to be 6 months down the track and saying, as a consultant, you might want to promise all sorts of things, but okay, we might reduce the lead times and reduce the cost and improve the quality and all of these sort of things, but these are some of the other things that are going to happen as well. So it's not all beer and skittles. We need to focus on frontline and middle management. I wrote down frontline and middle management have the most to lose, but also the most to gain. And I think that's a huge one. And I often talk about starting in the middle. So
Yeah.
they're the key drivers. You can't have top down work because it can't penetrate, and you can't have bottom up because it can't penetrate. So they are key people, and establishing structured communication and standardization. So there's a lot of, kind of a lot of basic, obvious stuff there, but it's what that phase looks like.
Yeah. So I was sorry, there's a comment just coming from Jim, which I'll read out in a minute. So that's your implementation phase, and I guess that's the reason why it takes so long. There's so much in it, and the reason why I was just have a little play and going, oh, see whether I agree or disagree, is because and I think we spoke about it in the past, is some people treat improvement like a project, define start, define stop, and it's not. It's about how we are every single day, and I think the more we are every single day, the deeper we go into it. Our last conversation was about our own personal journeys, and about how we've learned and stuff. And it's gone, and I've tried to define this in 4Ps now. So I've reflected a lot since our previous conversation, and process is the first P. So it's about the tools and all of that, working on process. Then it's about projects and programs, where you stitch all of these tools together and bring it all together. Then it's about the importance of people. And that was a bit of a moment for me, where I've realized actually it's an emotional journey that people go through and all of this stuff. And you need to build people's capability. And then the 4th P is about the psychology, and about it's what happens in here. Is what you need to be challenging first. But it's taken me like the 16 years of various stages of delivering change to transition through these 4Ps. And I think when we're trying to sustain the change in an organization, it's about trying to take those 4P or whatever it is, but just digging deeper every single time to make it habitual, to make it part of what we do. And just by fixing a process, you can mistake proof a process. You can build in certain criteria so that somebody always picks this up like this and always puts this down like that. All right, so you can make that automatic and habitual. But then to really create, so I think the second option on your survey, a learning organization, it's into those last 2Ps. It's about the people and the psychology, getting people to open their minds and develop different ways of working every single time. And I think that really is the crux of this sustaining the change, is transitioning and having like Dave says, it's about having an abundance mindset. So it's not about having a defined start and defined stop. It's about living healthier. So that's just where my mind went with what you were talking about. Jim Longton has put why, what, do you want to change? This is the starting point. You must take time to explain what you're seeking to all your people. If your people trust you, they will work with you to achieve the changes needed. If everyone is on board, the change will be self-sustaining. Yes. So I think, yes, it will. Yes, it will. But I think there's some environmental things that we need to consider to make it, to prompt people to do the right thing at the right time every time. Like, so for this meeting, 15 minutes before this meeting started, I had a calendar invite that pinged up that prompted me to go, okay, you've got a meeting starting with the legend that is Paul Dunlop in 15 minutes time. And I think, no, it did. That's and I think there's a whole communication piece. There's a whole environmental and trigger piece, and trying to prompt the right activity. Dave Cartwright has then said, "Yep, lean is not a diet; it's a lifestyle. Love the 4P model. Thumbs up." So yeah, the secret to sustaining the change, you touched on it before. There is no secret, I don't think, is there? There's a lot of things that need to be done with the people that you're working with and the problem that you're trying to solve, and collaborating on it together. It's not a one size fits all thing. So yeah, I'm conscious that I've not taken a breath for a little bit. What are you thinking, Paul Dunlop?
That's all that Coke you're drinking. Or is it Coke? So yeah, I love the 4P model. Like, I think that again, the longer I go on and the more I learn, I've sort of said that, continuous improvement is more psychology than it is mathematics. I think there's plenty of people out there who think it's just statistics and tools and all the rest of it. It's not. It's psychology, and probably, I always say that sort of the lean tools are here. There's psychology that underpins that, and there's neuroscience that sits underneath that. And I think when we actually understand how people think and what's going on in their brains, and we start to think about it in that way and work backwards, then we're in a good place, and we're thinking in the right way. And that's where, again, the leadership and the influence of leadership really starts to come to the fore. It is very much a hearts and minds exercise. It's about it's a community effort, and I think we have to think in that way. It's an organisation is a community of people that are there for again, we want to frame those the purpose and the vision and the values of that community, and we want to rinse and repeat every single day. It needs to be loud and clear. We need to live those values. Toyota talk about it, everyone, every day. That's where we need to get to. But, we need to create the right culture to facilitate that. We need to create a safe culture, a culture that values the process rather than the outcomes, a culture that values learning and improvement over outcomes. So there's many different things. And it takes time to get there. I sort of scribbled down the word slow. So off the back of Jim's comment is that often we can rush into change. And I think we think we're moving quicker and we think we're making more progress. And if you sort of crash and bash it, you can, but it's not going to be sustainable. And often you can cause a lot of damage by rushing in, not really considering, not consulting in the right way, not framing the why very well. And then sometimes you can't recover from that. So, I think there's a lot in that. But I think ultimately, the two most important P's are the people and the psychology piece. And I think if you can get that right, and I've seen this in clients where, a lot of my work as a consultant, a lot of your work as a consultant is sorting culture out. And you almost have to do that in parallel. And in some ways, getting the cultural and the leadership part becomes more of a focus to then enable the rest of it to happen. Where, I've got a couple of clients who've done a lot of the cultural work before I came in, and it's so much easier just to then implement and focus on the right things. Dave, in there, he's got capable people. Often we don't have the right people or the right people in the right places to have an environment of success. So there's a lot of moving parts.
There is, and as always through these conversations, my mind goes in different directions, and I have different thoughts and stuff. And so my previous thought was around the tour guide versus the tool guide, and I think I've got to do something with that. I think that's because there is two different types of people. But then when we're talking about this journey, if we just continue that analogy, I think it's a horizontal and it's a vertical journey. And I think people just look at it horizontally. They look at we're here now, we want to fix that. But then the vertical journey is the psychology and it's the people and it's having depth of capability, like Dave says, capable people. It's having depth of capability, depth of learning as you're taking the steps of your journey horizontally, rather than just fixating. We're here, we want to get to here, without understanding all of the things that underpin it all as well. And I think there's a depth of a vertical journey that I think that people don't necessarily understand or want to dig into, and that just comes through exactly like you were saying, the repeating, the developing, the thinking and the capable people and stuff, and not going too fast. If you just focus on a horizontal journey, it's a 100-meter dash. It's that's it. But if you've got stuff in the way that you actually got to dig up as you're going, then it's going to take a hell of a lot longer. And people are fixated on this 100-meter dash without the digging as you're going. So yeah, that's just where my mind is going through this conversation. So thank you, Paul Dunlop, for allowing me to continue my thinking.
Thank you, Lee.
So if you had to summarize, because I mean, unfortunately, I'm off on the road shortly. But if you had to summarize sustaining the change, the secret to you, Paul, how would you summarize it?
It's a good question. I think it's all of the above. So one, I think, like you've just outlined, we actually have to go through those initial phases, through implementation, through maintenance, and do the practice, spend the time, and learn. So I think the implementation is just the change process itself. Then, maintenance is really about compliance. Like we've made the change, but if we take the focus off, then it's going to backslide. So we need to go through that phase. So it's focus, it's accountability. In that phase where we're learning how to problem solve and really sort of embed that. we're using leader standard work. We're really, it's about embedding those habits. We've learnt the habits now. We are sort of practicing those habits. It's becoming more and more and more of a norm. I think in that sustain phase, then and I think also through maintaining it, it's still reliant on a leader or leaders. It's still reliant on a consultant. Sustaining is when we're not reliant on an individual. I think it's become a cultural norm. It's become the new. That's how we do things around here. It's when we've passed that point of return, like we couldn't imagine doing it the old way. It's that sort of mentality. It's internal ownership. It's internal capability. It's also something that's embedded organisation wide. So again, it's not the Toyota production system; it's the Toyota way. So it's not just operational; it's right across the organisation. Again, I talked about that sort of self-motivation where we've gone through autonomy, we've gone through mastery, we've gone through purpose. So all of those things are keeping us going. So it is self-sustaining. It's not sustaining through, anything external or anything extrinsic. It's because people understand it and they want to do it for the right reasons in the right way. So I don't know if that answers the question in any way, shape or form, but I think that's kind of, what it looks like, feels like, and sounds like, Lee.
Yeah, I love it. And the thing that really is, I guess, hit home for me, the importance of what you said right at the start, practicing letting go from the start, because then people aren't developing. So if they're using an external helper, external support to help them get there, that external support has got to start with the mindset of, and I'm going to keep using your phrase, of practicing letting go, building the capability, and then practicing, giving them the rope and stuff, and letting them go away. Jim has just said, actually, off the back of what you've just said, that TAS, the Toyota Attitude System. And I think it all about is about belief and attitude. And I talk a lot about connection. And I think that for me, sustaining the change is about having a healthy connection between everybody and connecting to you as individuals and people connecting together, connecting to the problem, which talks about what Jim was saying there is why and what do you want to change. So if everybody has got a level of connection to the challenge that they're about to tackle together, and then connection to the solution, connection to this journey that everybody is on with clarity of understanding that actually it's not a dash, it's not time, is not the thing that you need to measure. It's depth of understanding and learning as you're going, and the environment is the biggest measure of whether or is the biggest mirror of how you are performing. I was driving the other day, and I feel like I can share this with you, Paul. I've started to write a book or a book. Yeah, I know. It's
Is it a book?
Yeah. So it might be 5 pages. It might be. I mean, it's never going to be 500 pages, but it might be 5 pages. It might not be. It might just be a LinkedIn article. Who knows how it might turn up? Anyway, and I was writing that, and
Hey, you've said it now.
Yeah. And I was thinking about this phrase, mirror. So it's far easier to look out the window than it is to look in the mirror. Okay, and I was thinking, and I wanted to elaborate on this a little bit more. And I think the biggest mirror that every organisation has got is the environment that it's in. So people, we all need to look in the mirror at what we're doing and how we're being and what we can do to challenge and make better things. But the biggest mirror that any leader has got is the environment that their people are working in. And I think that for me is the temperature check that we need to look at. It's not the time of the project, are we red, are we green, and all of that stuff. It's the how's the environment, what's playing back to us all of the time. And I think if we can consistently use the environment as our mirror, as a gauge and the temperature check, then that will help us to sustain the change, because every organisation is different. Anyway, there you go. I kind of went on a little detour.
I love it. And that's where we get into reflective practice. Again, we're talking Hanse and, act or adjust whatever flavor you want to put on it. But, I talk to leaders endlessly about, their environment or what's going on in their team, their organization is a direct reflection of them. That's sometimes difficult, as confronting, all of those sort of things. But I think that's one part of it, and I think you're absolutely right. It's that will be the differentiator, that will allow things to, again, we're talking about the flow. So we're talking about the flow of improvement. If the environment and the conditions aren't conducive to producing that flow, well, it's not going to happen, or it's going to take its own time, and that's okay. That's okay. We have to let it percolate. If it's a trickle or if it's a fire hose, whatever it is, it will move at its own pace, in accordance with the environment. So I think that's a really good point. So yeah, I think we've hit a lot of those key marks. I think maybe there's something to be discussed maybe in a future episode just about reflection
Yes.
and self-awareness.
Yes, I
Mm.
think that would be amazing, actually, and I think that would make a beautiful Christmas special.
Oh,
Do you have a
nicely
red
done.
hat? Do you have a red
I
hat?
will source one. I'll find one. I'll find one.
Perfect.
I'll
Perfect.
find
Well,
something special.
so I think that would be a really good one, because we could reflect back over the previous 5 conversations, and we can reflect back about all sorts of different things. So yeah, no, that would be amazing if you would do me the honor of having a Christmas conversation with me. Then I would absolutely love that opportunity.
It would be a pleasure.
Oh, very good, very good. Well, Mr. Dunlop, I just want to say thank you so much again. My mind is aware, and I'm going to get on the road, and then I'm going to just think more deeply about everything that we spoke about, because this is what happens all the time. And then yeah, I love the tour guide, or the tool guide. I love that. I love the practice letting go. There's also yeah, so many things that I'm going to go and think about. So thank you. Dave Cartwright just said, thanks, Lee and Paul. Fantastic content and discussion. Great way to start the week. Have an amazing week. Anybody that has joined us or anybody that's caught up, following. And yeah, so look out for the Christmas special. I am so excited.
And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lee. Lee, you drive safely and have a wonderful day.
And you. Cheers, Paul.
All right. Love your work. See you later.